What the hell is going on in Numenor? Is that Gandalf putting the smackdown on some wolves? And this lady looks like she could use some vitamin D. Rings of Power Episode 5 is out, and I'm here to answer some of the show's biggest questions and quickly be told how wrong I am in the comments section. But without further ado, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Let's get into it. We begin with Nori teaching the stranger about the Great Harfoot Migration, also known as the Wandering Days. At this time, the Harfoots, distant ancestors of hobbits, were a nomadic people. It won't be until the year 1601 of the Third Age that the hobbits of Bree are granted permission by King Argalab II to colonize the region that we'll come to know as the Shire. There are essentially three main stops in their seasonal migration: winter in Old Forest, midsummer in Norfold Glen, where we saw them eating those snails, and autumn a place called the Grove, which they're heading to now. Judging by the map, they're somewhere east of the Misty Mountains. The whole question of who the stranger is and whether or not he's good or bad is once again at the forefront of this storyline. Nori believes him to be good, but as we'll see later, his unexplainable powers call this into question. Is he Sauron? Well, I think the show wants us to think that. Even Waldreg hinted that the being who came from the sky must be the Dark Lord. However, I'm more inclined to believe he's one of the Maiar, a being sent by the Valar to aid in the defeat of Sauron. Whether this is Gandalf or some other wizard is yet to be known. Here we get our first glimpse at these three interesting characters, known in the credits simply as the Nomad, the Ascetic, and the Dweller. They don't appear to be elves, judging by their ears, and they are very interested in where the stranger has landed. Why would they be looking for him? My best guess is based off the name of one of these three women, the Ascetic, which means someone who observes severe self-discipline and abstention from all forms of indulgence, typically for religious reasons. Their outfits do look like they could be part of some sort of religion, and check out what the Ascetic has on the back of this plate, the same exact constellation markings the stranger made with the fireflies, and that he also carved into a tree. I'm not convinced they're followers of Sauron just yet, because typically Sauron's followers wear black. Of course, there are exceptions. The Dweller has her hand over one of the footprints, suggesting she has some sort of power to track or identify its owner. Are these black fingers a result of using magic, or sticking her hand in the ash? The elven orc leader Adar basks in the light of the sun, telling his orc follower that soon it will be gone. Whatever Adar has planned seems to involve blocking out the sun, likely so that his orcs who are vulnerable to its rays can move about without the use of tunnels. Speaking of which, he's told the tunnel is complete, but just where they have stopped and what its purpose is yet unknown. Bronwyn has somehow hedged her way into being the leader of the Southland refugees. Not exactly sure how this came to be, considering in episode 1 everyone was giving her side-eye for hanging out with an elf. Who knows, maybe she got mad street cred for killing that orc. The Southlanders have a big decision to make after being told of Adar's demands. They can either die here or swear fealty to him. While Bronwyn wants them to stay and fight, Waldreg leads the cowards to pledge allegiance to someone he thinks is Sauron. More on that in a bit. Back in Numenor, check out this horse being lifted onto a ship. I wonder if that's Beric, Isildur's horse he'll later mention. Speaking of Isildur, he's pissed at his father for not being included on the expeditionary force being sent to Middle-earth. Isildur has blown his chance at proving himself after purposely getting himself kicked out of the Sea Guard, a job his father had to pull strings to get him on in the first place. All these men coming with them have either served or proven themselves worthy, and right now Isildur has done none of that. At the court of Numenor, Pharazôn is berated by an angry crowd pissed off about the expeditionary force following the likes of an elf. I'm not quite sure how we went from people all raising their hands vowing to help at the end of last episode to this. Among those displeased is Eärien, although I think her motivations for stopping this expedition aren't rooted in racism towards elves, rather a love for her family. Her mother is dead, one of her brothers is missing somewhere out in Middle-earth, and at the end of this episode both her dad and other brother are off to war. So she tries to get Pharazôn's son, who she went on a date with last episode, to convince the Chancellor to put a stop to this. Halbrand has escaped the Númenórean jail and got himself one of those fancy smithing guild badges. This was part of his deal with Pharazôn to learn the whereabouts of Galadriel after her escape. It's how Queen Regent Miriel was able to find her at the King's Tower. The success of Miriel's expedition hinges on Halbrand's willingness to rally the Southlanders around him, and that willingness is hanging on a thread. He doesn't want to go back to the Southlands, later giving Galadriel the symbol of his people, telling her to find another head to crown. The migration is not going well. The lands they're traveling through have never been this bare before. In episode 1, we learned that a farmer's crops were basically rotting away, likely something to do with the orcs taking over the land. It seems this blight is spreading farther than we thought. The Harfoots are attacked by a group of wolves hinted way back in episode 1. Luckily, the stranger is there to help using this crazy strong slam attack, which causes his hand to blacken. It really makes me question whether using magic drains energy from him. It's possible it could be some sort of bruise, but I've never seen something bruise that fast.
I'm a doctor.
The men of the expeditionary force are untrained against orcs, thus making Galadriel a suitable teacher considering her experience against them. She has thousands of years of sword training practice compared to a few years with these soldiers, so to me it's not that much of a stretch that she's able to take on 5 of these guys at once. In fact, she ends up promoting Valandil, who was the only one able to nick her. There's this really interesting scene where Halbrand picks up a sword quite expertly, and it definitely looks like he's handled one before. What else is this guy hiding? Kemen pleads with his father to stop this expeditionary force. Why now is he deciding to side with the elf? Pharazôn here is thinking far ahead, that if they do end up helping the Southlanders, they can give them a king who will forever be in their debt. The amount of resources they could exploit, trade routes to open, and riches to earn could make them unimaginably wealthy. We can actually see 2 maps here that Pharazôn is looking at. One appears to be that of the Southlands, which will become Mordor, and the other the Sea of Belfalas, to the west of the Southlands, likely where the Númenóreans would land. King Tar Palantir sure is sounding like a crazy old man. When he was king, he wanted to re-establish an alliance with elves to fight Sauron, something that got him exiled. However, when his daughter tells him the good news that she's off to restore that connection, he tells her there's nothing but darkness in Middle-earth. The stranger is cooling his hand in some water, in some sort of deep trance. Suddenly his arm turns to ice, and even Nori can't escape its grasp. She's blasted away and runs off, frightened by this power. Now we do see the stranger examine his hand. Is he scared and unsure of his own power, or has his hand fully healed? There's definitely something to say about this ice power. In fact, when Nori first stepped on those flaming embers where he landed, she noted that they weren't hot, but cold. King Gil-galad of Lindon has invited Prince Durin to discuss their alliance, but the king actually wants to find out what the dwarves have been up to, considering their furnaces have been burning so bright as of late. The dwarves are hiding the discovery of Mithril ore, a material lighter than silk and harder than iron. Legend says that Mithril was created when lightning ensnared a tree atop the Misty Mountain, where an unending duel occurred between good and evil. The lightning, combined with this great conflict, sprouted down the roots, creating Mithril. If this legend is true, Mithril is thus composed of equal part good and equal part evil. The elves, too, have a secret. They need Mithril if they are to survive what's to come. The king believes the life of the Eldar is fading from them, and the only way they can prevent it diminishing into nothing is to use the Mithril to saturate every last elf in Middle-earth. For Celebrimbor has done tests, and nothing diminishes Mithril's light. So Elrond is put in a tough situation. Does he break his promise to Durin wherein he vowed not to tell anyone of this Mithril, or does he keep it and risk his people dying? Now there's also this fun little way Durin plays with the king, telling him the stone used for their dining table is revered amongst the dwarves, saved only for mausoleums and tombs, so the king agrees to give it to him even though that was all bullshit. Isildur apologizes to his friend, the one he punched last episode, and pleads to him to let him join the expedition. But even though he lets Valandir get 2 free hits in, his friend says only when he's found something willing to sacrifice himself for will he be ready. So Isildur, with no other recourse, decides to stow away, where he finds Kemen sabotaging the boat. In their tussle, the entire ship explodes, but Isildur valiantly saves the man who blew up his ticket out of there. So why then does he lie about what happened? Simple, it's a lot better if he's seen as a hero rather than a stowaway involved in the ship's destruction. Miriel and Galadriel watch the aftermath from up top, where it's thought the culprit was a passing brigand. With tempers flaring about this expedition force, Pharazôn recommends they win more hearts to their cause before venturing off, but Galadriel says they have no time to waste. Every second they're not fighting Sauron is a day he's getting stronger. The blast destroyed 2 out of 5 ships, and Miriel decides to make her decision tomorrow morning, and Halbrand must be in attendance. Celebrimbor comes clean and tells Elrond that he too knew the life of the Eldar was fading. It's why they need the help of the dwarves in the first place. Without them, they'd never get that forge completed in time, a forge that may be required to, quote, saturate every last elf with this mithril. Galadriel makes one last attempt to sway Halbrand to her side. It seems he was involved in unspeakable things in order to survive, and when his people find out what he did, they'll cast him out. He vowed never to return, but Galadriel tells him he won't achieve peace by hiding on Numenor. He must face his past and in so doing achieve redemption. Waldreg and Theo's friend Rowan cut their losses and side with Adar, but Waldreg is confused when Adar implies he is not Sauron. In fact, it seems as though Waldreg must prove his loyalty by killing Rowan. Arondir teaches Theo how to use a bow, but Theo is more interested in why Arondir chose to stay and fight an almost unwinnable battle. Arondir has been with these people for over 79 years. He knows that some of them are good people, and they deserve to stand a chance and fight. Theo believes Arondir's words and divulges to him that mysterious blade he found back in episode 1. To Theo's surprise, Arondir has seen this before. Carved into the walls of Osterith is a face that looks a lot like Sauron's, below it a sword that looks like Theo's blade. But check out what this blade is doing. It's stabbing a man with long hair. Is it just a random person, or could it be Adar? And why does Adar want this blade so bad? According to Arondir, this weapon is a key used to enslave their ancestors and is somehow involved in making Adar a god and orcs claiming this land. But Bronwyn has lost faith. She is ready to turn herself in knowing the fight is futile and her people are destined for darkness. When they march upon the tower, it will fall, and this gives Arondir an idea. If you stick around for my preview section, you'll know what happens. Elrond tells Durin the truth about what is to happen to his people should they not get that mithril, and Durin is willing to help, but first he must convince his father, the king. Back in Numenor, the expedition begins its departure. Isildur has secured himself a spot, having proven his heroics, although it's only gotten him the job of stable sweeper. Galadriel arrives in some kick-ass armor along with her brother's blade. Halbrand has also decided to join as the Númenóreans depart for the Southlands. So that's it for this video. Give it a like and let me know in the comments what you think will happen next. Thanks a lot for watching.